Hey, Dr. Sean here at Golden Mind Method, and in this video I'm going to be sharing with you how to use releasing for grief and loss. And this is something that hit me very hard, very recently and very personally, because my cat, I've had for a little over 5 years, recently passed away. We had to put him to sleep with unexpected, very bad intestinal issues that were unfortunately not able to be resolved. It happened within 1 to 2 days, completely unexpected. Now, for those of you who have never owned a cat for a long time or an animal for a long time, it may not seem that losing a cat can be a huge loss or feel like enormous grief. But let me tell you that it was. It definitely was. And I lost my dad about 8 years ago now, or about seven years ago now, I think. And that was really, really rough at the time. And at that point in time, I did not know about releasing emotions like I do now. I didn't know anything about it. So that was a really, really rough time for me. But let me tell you that losing this cat was not far behind. And I know that to some of you that might sound crazy, but it's true. This cat was, the difference was when I lost my dad, I wasn't in the same state as where my mom and dad lived anymore. And so even though it was incredibly difficult, at least I didn't have constant reminders because I didn't live with them for a long time. So I was only aware of it when I started thinking about it. So at least I could distract myself or do other things, But when I lost my cat and I came back to my apartment, I saw evidence of my cat everywhere. I had all of these memories. I didn't live in this apartment ever without the cat. And so there were just so many memories and so many things that were constantly in my head. And that was one of the reasons that made it seem so unbearable and very difficult to deal with. This was a little over about a month and a half ago that this happened. So the reason I want to shoot this video is because I was able to use the techniques that I've learned about releasing emotions to drastically help with this grief process. Drastically. It shortened a grieving period for me that would have been at least a month or 2 or 3 into about a week, maybe less than a week, like 4 days, 5 days, but really only 2 to 2 days of a really, really intense grief and 3 days of intense to moderate grief. Now, to some of you, that might seem weird, because shouldn't you miss someone who's gone? Shouldn't you go through that grieving period? Shouldn't you be sad that they're gone? And let me tell you that I did go through a grieving period. It was just condensed and effective. Instead of holding those emotions down within me and only letting spurts of them out, which is what most people do. And that's why it takes a long time to get over this grief. Sometimes it takes years to get over loss of a loved one. And there's no reason for that. There's no point to it. It doesn't help you. It doesn't help them. It doesn't help anyone. The frame of mind that you come to when you release the grief, it's not that you no longer miss them, but it's that you transform the sadness and the hurt and the pain into love and appreciation for their life. You change the deep hurt and sadness into so appreciating the time that you were able to have with them. And that, in my opinion, is a much better way to honor their memory. If you passed away, would you want your loved ones, every time they thought of you, to be miserable? Or do you want them to feel deep love and appreciation for you and for your life and for the time they had with you. So it isn't that we're forgetting the person or the animal. It's not like that at all. We don't release the love. We don't release the compassion and the appreciation. We just release the pain and the hurt that actually is blocking us from being able to feel that love and appreciation. And so when you use these techniques, when you're able to release and let go, the grieving process becomes much more effective and efficient, because instead of having these emotions just tear you apart from the inside and feel so unbearable, you now feel them flow through you. You feel relief. And with that relief comes a deeper ability to feel love and appreciation. So let me just tell you my experience with this real quick. So the first day or two after we had to put him to sleep, it felt unbearable to me. It was just, I could not feel any emotion besides intense sense of loss and grief and sadness, and it felt unbearable. And I tried to use some of the natural releasing techniques that I teach here, and it was even too intense for me. I couldn't let it out. So what I had to fall back on was actually using what I call releasing with training wheels, which is tapping, or emotional freedom technique. I have explained one version of this in another video where I go over how to use faster EFT to release your emotions. I will link that above right here. And that's a very easy to go through video to start releasing with this technique. But tapping allows you to start releasing when you feel that you can't. When you feel that you can't let go on your own, it really facilitates that process. Now, that video that I just shared with you, Faster EFT, I couldn't even use that technique because it was just too overwhelming for me. So all I could do at this point when it first happened was feel my grief, feel my sadness, feel my loss, and literally just tap on the points. And I use these points specifically, but it doesn't really, there's different points, but these are the most general points. And I just literally would sit here for a half hour and feel my emotions and tap. And that's all I did. Very basic way to release. The easiest way to release. Not the most effective, not the quickest way to release, but when you are overwhelmed with emotion, sometimes it's the only way you can release. So by doing that, instead of trying to escape my feelings, instead of trying to distract myself and do other things and not think about it, which would suppress the emotions, I did the opposite. I purposely laid down and would feel these really bad feelings, the sadness, the sense of loss, as much as I could, and just allowed it without resisting it, and just tapped at the same time. That's all I was doing. I wasn't trying to do anything else. And what I found was that usually within 20 minutes or so, I would get to this really, really calm state, which meant that I had released a lot of what I was feeling just then. I had a lot more still in me, but I definitely made some progress. And I felt that relief and that peace and that ease that came with that. And that's what I had to do really the entire first day. And me and my wife, we would take walks and we would talk about him. And I was tapping on her. She was tapping on me. We were tapping on each other. We were tapping on ourselves. And just feeling the emotions and just letting them happen without resisting them. That was the first day, the first day and a half. After it calmed down enough, where I'd released enough that I could move on to the second technique, which is a little bit quicker and a little bit more effective, which is the faster EFT, which is the video I had already linked above. It's also in the description below if you want to check it out there. But the faster EFT does allow that releasing to become a little quicker, but I just wasn't even at the point where I could use that at first. But now I was. And so I started using that faster EFT version, which is very similar to what I was just describing. It's just that you go through your feelings and feel it as fully as possible. You tap through the points while only focusing on the points. You no longer focus on the emotion, which is a little different from what I was doing before. You grab your wrist, you say peace, and then you get into a good memory. Now, this is the part I couldn't do before because I couldn't get into a good memory. It was just too overwhelming. But now I was at the point where I could get into a good feeling memory and allow myself to feel those good feelings. And that really facilitates the releasing process. That's why faster EFT is faster than regular EFT. It's one of the main reasons. And so with this approach, within less than half a day, I was able to release a lot more. And then I got to the point where I was able to do natural releasing. Now, I've made 2 videos on natural releasing. And what natural releasing means is it's releasing without tapping. It's just allowing that emotion to come up and flow through and out of you. And in the beginning, when it was so overwhelming, I just couldn't do that. I couldn't get to that point, even though I had practiced that a lot before. But now that I'd released how overwhelming it was, I was at this place where I was able to start letting it out. Both of those, I'll link both of those videos. So this is one way to do natural releasing above that you can check out here. And then there's another way, which is a more recent video that I shot on how, just using a different metaphor on how to use natural releasing that I will also link above here. The reason there's multiple videos is because some techniques work better than others for certain people to get the hang of it. So you'll have to see what resonates with you. But once I got to that point, then I was able to let that emotion just start flowing through me. And I would just sit there sometimes for 10 minutes and just floods of emotion was coming out of me. But that was by far the most powerful. And by the time those 10 minutes were up and I felt the last little bit of emotion come out, just such a deep peace was there. A deep calm, a deep peace, and so much relief. Now, that it didn't mean I was 100% done. Throughout the day, it would kind of pop back up again, and I'd have more to release. But within 5 to 6 days or so, I was able to release the vast majority of it and get to this place where, when I thought of my cat Binks, I just felt appreciation for the time I had with him and the love that I had for him. And I really liked being at that place. Now, one problem when it comes to releasing grief and loss and sadness is that sometimes our conscious mind wants to fight us because it thinks that we shouldn't let this go. We shouldn't let this pain go if we love this person or if we love this animal, that we are somehow letting go of their memory. And sometimes that can be really convincing. That was happening even for me. But just because of all my past and previous experience of releasing, I knew that this was the right direction. I knew this was the loving direction, that I wouldn't be releasing his memory. But sometimes when you feel like you're releasing that pain, you feel like you're releasing their memory, but it isn't true. So if you can push past that and allow yourself to release, even though your conscious mind is fighting you a bit, on the other side of that, you come to a deep place of love and appreciation, which again is just a much better way to honor their memory. So I hope this was a little insightful for you. I hope this helped you on understanding how releasing can help with grief and loss, and just a more personal example from my life on how I went about it. In my opinion, it's very useful to have these 3 different forms of releasing: just the general tapping procedure, the faster EFT version of tapping, and then the skill that you train of being able to release naturally. Because when you get to that point, when you release the emotion naturally, dozens of times more effective than the tapping approach. Very, very quick, very effective when you get to that point. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, any comments, please leave them in the comment section below. I'd be more than happy to answer them. If you haven't taken advantage of the free gift that I have a free PDF download with accompanying audio that I help take you through how to release naturally without tapping, how to start developing this skill of being able to let go of all of these negative emotions that are blocking you from your natural state of joy, love, appreciation, peace, and bliss. And so if you want to take advantage of that, that is in the link below in the description, so you can check that out. I hope you found this helpful, and I look forward to talking with you again soon.